In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity. And welcome back to another week on the Catholic Toolbox, the Art of Practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here as we equip you with practical tools to live your faith in our modern world of today. And this week, we are going into the desert, into the Lenten season. And for those who've already started on Monday, well into the Lenten season over these 2 days. But for the most of the Universal Church, we'll enter into the Lenten season tomorrow, Ash Wednesday, but today is Shrove Tuesday, or Fat Tuesday, or Pancake Tuesday, or often known as Mardi Gras. The Mardi Gras. So happy Shrove Tuesday, or Fat Tuesday, or Drunken Tuesday. Father John Flader, welcome back to the show.
Many thanks, George. Good to have you.
It's always great to have you.
Yes. No,
yes. How you been? I feel like I haven't seen you for a while.
I'm very well, thank God.
Yes.
I'm very well.
You're out and about. You're very busy. You do a lot of things.
I'm very busy.
You're writing books. You're hearing confessions. You're giving talks.
There's another book coming, by the way.
Oh, there is?
On life after death issues. Yeah, this one will be questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
Questions and answers that I've written over the last 20 years of the Catholic Weekly.
Yeah.
By the way, this coming Sunday, they will publish my 1,000th column.
1,000th column. Wow.
So that's a bit of a milestone.
That is a milestone.
And so I thought, we can maybe get another book out of how many questions and answers are there on life after death issues. And I figured I counted them, there were about 50, and I'm writing some more, so I have a few more. And then the book might be titled, Do Pets Go to Heaven? And Other Questions and Answers on Life After Death. So that's the present project, apart from all the other work I'm doing.
Okay, but there wasn't another book regarding life and death, was there?
Well, there's three. There were three before, and now this is the fourth.
Yes, excellent. And question time. For those who don't know, Father John Flader is the columnist in the Catholic Weekly newspaper for the Question Time column, where you answer questions every single week, and you do it, 52 weeks a year, is it? Or 50?
Every week there's a column.
There's a column.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody sends a question. You can email your question to Father John, and he'll answer your question.
Depending on whether I've already answered it, which is the case with many questions. I can send the already printed answer back to the person who asks, if they ask by email. But questions come from other sources as well, like conversations with people, classes I'm giving and people ask questions, a book I'm reading and here's a great question and answer which comes from the book. So many sources.
Excellent. Or maybe emails. I've emailed you many questions.
Yeah, lots of emails.
I don't know if any of them have made it into the newspaper, but maybe my questions aren't good enough.
No, it depends on whether they've already been answered and whether
they're too tedious to answer.
No.
About canon law or...
No, I'm
too much canon law questions.
I'm into canon law, so we can answer those too.
Or I'll just send you a text message. That'll be an express...
Yeah. People send me
express answer.
Yes,
so. But what's our topic today? We're going into Lent, and we have less than 24 hours before we start Lent tomorrow.
Except for you Maronites, Ash Monday.
Ash Monday.
And I was talking with one of the Maronite priests yesterday, and I asked him, do you know why you start on Monday and the rest of the church starts on Wednesday? And this priest didn't know. And the answer that I've heard, I think there's two answers, but the one that satisfies me most is that every year in Lent, there are two solemnities, St. Joseph and the Annunciation. They always fall in Lent. And so, since those are not days of penance, nor are the Sundays, you start on Monday and then you still have 40 days. In the Latin Church, starting on Ash Wednesday, there are exactly 40 days from Ash Wednesday to Holy Saturday, leaving out the Sundays. But if we don't want to do penance on the two big feast days, and in Australia we get St. Patrick as well, so there's three.
Exactly.
So
it's a solemnity.
you Maronites are doing it better than the rest of us. You have 40 days, and we have 38 or really 37. So, congratulations.
Well, I'm starting tomorrow.
Okay.
Always have.
No, Lent.
And so, where do we start our Lenten journey, Father? What could we focus on this year? I mean, every year it seems to come around at the beginning of the year. Lent comes past. We have some aspirations to fast or some other form of penance. But how should we approach 2025 Lenten season in the context of today? Maybe the struggles of the Holy Father with his health at the moment, or any other event or circumstance in today's context. What should be the agenda for 2025 Lent?
Well, the agenda is always the same. It's prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. The Gospel of the Sermon on the Mount that we read on Ash Wednesday every year. Prayer, and when you pray, don't stand on the street corners, and when you fast, don't make it obvious that you're fasting, and when you give alms, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. So those are the three, always something in those areas. But this year, being the Jubilee year, I've recorded a meditation just today that hopefully can go onto my blog on tomorrow. And if anyone wants to find my blog, by the way, just put my surname, Flader, blog, or Flader Meditations into Google. It comes up straight away.
Oh, what's your actual website? Is it Father Flader blog?
Oh, there's an official title, but just put Flader Meditations or Flader blog, and it will come up.
Or Fr John Flader.
Well, that will give you lots of other things, like books and articles.
Books and articles, okay. Yeah. Flader blog.
Yeah.
Father John Flader
so
blog.
what I've done in this meditation is use the Pope's Lenten message for this year, 2025, which we remember is a Jubilee year. So he mentions three different aspects of how we can live Lent this particular year in the Jubilee. And I've used them in the meditation. And the first one is we're on a journey. He calls us pilgrims of hope. People go to Rome, people go to a church or shrine in their own diocese, designated by the bishop to gain the plenary indulgence. So we're pilgrims, and so we are on a journey. So he speaks about various aspects of that journey. And when we think of Lent, and I quote St. Augustine in a beautiful text, that it was a homily that he gave in Easter time, but he said, the time before Easter symbolizes our life here on earth with its temptations, trials, and tribulations. The time after Easter, the Easter season, which is even longer than Lent, symbolizes heaven, the goal of our journey. So life is a journey. We're going through life, whatever time God gives us, to heaven, to eternity. So we're always on a journey, and Lent forms part of that journey. We can quicken our pace now in Lent. So the first aspect was a journey. The second one was we are going together with others. And in the church, thank God, we have a church. We are not making our way to heaven on our own. We're going with the whole church. And others are supporting us. We are supporting them. Communion of saints. People are praying for us in heaven, in purgatory. We're praying for them, and we're praying for each other. We go to a church, we go to a mass. There's other people there. We support them just by our presence. They support us. And so our Lenten journey is together with others. And he mentions there particularly aspects of charity that we can live with others. He mentions things like be a listening ear to someone that wants to talk. Let's be there for them. Let's serve them. Let's be aware of their presence. And he speaks of that as an exercise of synodality, working together with others. So the second aspect is we're on a journey together. And the third one, we are on a journey of hope. And we always live hope. And I've used his beautiful bull of indiction, to use the proper term, for the Jubilee year, Spes non confundit, the Latin title, Hope Does Not Disappoint, from Romans chapter 5. And he's mentioning so many things about hope. I've used that for another one of my meditations, Living in Hope, I think it's called, whatever. And so we're always living in hope. But in today's world, when things are going so badly in some quarters, the laws being passed, the dropout from the practice of the faith of many of our fellow Catholics, the attitudes of people that aren't Christian, and the laws that are being passed. So with all of this, people get anxious. Apart from the environment around us, which can be a source of anxiety, we look at our own families. And there's this one who's very sick. And then we need hope to pray for them. And someone else has just died, and we pray that they will go at least to purgatory and then to heaven, or maybe straight to heaven. And another one is my 22-year-old son. They say, stop practicing. He's not even having the children baptized. And they give up hope that he'll ever change, especially when he's 41 and he's still in that condition. So hope, we always need it. And especially now, the Jubilee theme is hope. When I first read that, I was delighted, because as a priest, I see a lot of people in various ways, in spiritual direction, in confession, in just dealing with people in masses and whatnot. And everybody has issues. Everybody has things that they're praying for, sometimes wondering, is this ever going to happen? And so hope is such an important, well, it's the second of the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. So the Pope mentions hope in the context of the Jubilee year of hope, that we are pilgrims journeying together in hope. And the ultimate object of hope, as he points out numerous times in that document, and as the Catechism says in treating the theological virtue of hope, the ultimate object is heaven, is eternal life. And so our Lenten journey is a journey through life here on earth during this special time of Lent, of the 40 days. It's a journey to heaven. And if we live Lent well, we are firmly on the way to heaven. And every year we get one more opportunity. And what I say to people is, for heaven's sake, for heaven's sake, take advantage of Lent. Don't just say, oh, I do a little token penance and I've lived my Lent. No, make a real effort. Be generous with Lent, in Lent, because Christ was generous in dying for us. And I mentioned all this in that Lenten meditation.
So are you calling us to an ascetical struggle in Lent?
Absolutely.
Are you calling us to be ascetical during this Lent?
No,
to push
absolutely.
ourselves and to challenge ourselves?
Yeah, no, always. And I quote St. Josemaria, the founder of Opus Dei, with whom I lived in Rome for 2 years and had hundreds of get-togethers, including 2 on my own.
What is Opus Dei?
What is Opus Dei? That's another whole get-together, George. But no, it's a personal prelate of the church. If you like, it's a body of faithful, Catholic faithful, mainly lay people, plus priests, and struggling for holiness in the middle of the world and in and through their ordinary life. We don't give up what we were doing before to do some special project like serve the poor or engage in education. If one was an airplane pilot, they remain an airplane pilot. Somebody else was a fisherman or a truck driver or a plumber or a professor or a banker or whatever. Keep on doing it. Sanctify that. Lay people, fully lay, seeking holiness. And a good number of the causes of beatification and canonization of lay people have been opened. So it's a way of holiness for lay people in the middle of the world, in a very simple definition or description. But St. Josemaria, a couple of years before he died, wrote in his notebook, "This is our destiny on earth, to struggle out of love until the last instant. Deo gratias. What he's saying and what he said so much to us in Rome is we have to be saints. Saints for the altars, canonizable saints. If not, we have failed. So we have to be struggling always to be a saint. We can never coast. And one analogy that I use often is in our Christian life, in a secular society, it's always been secular, and we are secular too in a way.
We're lay people in the world.
Yeah, we're in the world, but we are going to heaven and we're struggling for holiness in a society which is not leading us in that direction. It's leading us in the opposite direction. And so my analogy is we are paddling a canoe upstream. The stream has always been against us. It is paganism, it is hedonism, it is find the comfortable way. That's the way of people. That's original sin. But we have to struggle to be saints, to live virtues, to go beyond the comfort zone. We're paddling upstream. We always have. And one thing I can say from the perspective of my good number of years on earth, and by the way, when I turned 80, I said I'm not 80, I'm 50. So I'm in my 50s now.
Yes.
And that's a good way to think.
But what's your fitness age?
Oh, 55? Yeah. I'm
more like 35, I think.
No, 55.
I heard you're very good at tennis.
I used to be. Anyway, that's another story too. However, now.
But you're better at golf.
But I'm hopeless in golf. I'm reasonably good at tennis. Anyway, let's get back to. You
just do it for the networking.
Let's get back to Lent. Okay, now we're paddling a canoe upstream, and when I came into this world, in the United States, in the 40s and 50s, the stream and the current were nowhere near as strong as they are today. If you turned on television, and we got it in the mid-40s.
That's right.
Every program was wholesome. There was no ratings. Everything was family-friendly. Everything. And everybody went to church. Everybody went to church. Protestants, Catholics went to church. Now, a few didn't, of course, but practically everybody went to church. They got married in church. Their marriages, in the main, lasted a lot longer than they do today. Drugs did not exist, recreational drugs. Pornography wasn't available. And so it was easy to live your Christian faith then, much easier than it is today. We were paddling upstream and it wasn't all that difficult. Today, the stream is very strong against it. It is really pagan. And so we have to keep on struggling, keep on paddling just to stay in the same place, let alone advance. And we should never forget that our life, our struggle for holiness is not only about us. It is about all the people around us. And our Lord said, you are the light of the world, and the light is not hidden under a bushel measure. Let it shine. We have to be saints. We have to have a bright light of our holiness, of our love for God, and our virtues shining for many people. We help them to go along with us. So we're not alone in this. This togetherness on the journey is so important. That sense of others around us that we can help. And whether those people be non-believers, whether they be other Christians, whether they be Hindus, Muslims, we pray for them. We want to help everybody get to heaven because heaven is for everybody. Christ died on the cross, and that's what we're celebrating in Lent, preparing for our redemption by his death on Good Friday and his resurrection on Easter Sunday. He died for everybody. He has a place in heaven for everybody. But a lot of people maybe aren't going to get there. Well, we have to help more to get there. We get there ourselves by our struggle for holiness, struggling out of love until the last instant, not beginning to a place where we can say, I'll coast now. Another of my ideas,
that's right.
If I'm talking too long, I talk too much, George. No. But if I'm talking too much,
you're a lot smarter than me. So
I'm not smart. just stop me, and we'll talk about something else. But I forgot what I was going to say anyway.
I don't need to talk as much. I'm sure my wife's listening here. I think I need to reduce the amount of talking. Let other people talk.
Well, that's what I'm here for, I suppose, is to say my
That's the
thoughts
fraternal correction.
on Lent. Yeah. So one of my thoughts, though, is this, that if we look at what the Church asks of us, Catholics in the Universal Church, Maronites are different. You don't eat anything until 12 often. But for the Universal Church, fasting, which is, what is it for us? It is 3 meals, if you want. 1 full meal, 2 smaller ones that together don't add up to the one full
meal,
which is pretty much what many people do anyway.
It's pretty
and then
easy.
not eating between meals. Fasting obliges everyone between the ages of 18 and 59. So you reach your 59th birthday, and people would say, hey, that's a bit strange. 59, why not 60? Because in the Latin way of reckoning your age, when you celebrate your 59th birthday, you are in your 60th year. So when you turn 59, you no longer need to fast. And I say, anybody who gets to the age of 59, which is young, and says, oh, thank God I don't have to fast, is foolish. Is very foolish. Why? Because the older we get and look back over the years behind us, we see the accumulation of sins. And when we look forward to when God is going to call us, there is less and less time remaining to make up for those sins. And my own way of looking at this is, the older you get, the more penance you do. We don't know whether we're ready to go straight to heaven or possibly to purgatory. Let's do more. And we're helping the communion of saints by doing that. We're growing in holiness, and we're more likely, if possible, to go straight to heaven. And it's essential for holiness in any case. St. Josemaria writes in The Forge, you will have as much sanctity as you have mortification done for love. And I often quote that. I think it's probably in my meditation. Maybe it isn't anyway.
For those who want to tune into Father John's meditation, they air here live on Voice of Charity Australia Radio, 1701 AM, Wednesdays, 4:30. Is that correct? Or 4 o'clock? I think it's 4:30. But tune in at 4:30 every Wednesday for your 30-minute meditation by Fr John Flader. You can listen here live on radio.
Or go to the blog and then subscribe to it, and then every new meditation you will get a notification on your device.
Or
and then,
podcasts.
And there's over 100 meditations. You can just listen to them at your leisure.
So the podcast is very important. So you can download Fr John Flader's Meditations of a Catholic Priest. Just type in John Flader or Fr John Flader, and the podcast will come up with all the meditations.
No. If you put my name, all sorts of things will come up. Just put
into the podcast.
Flader blog or Flader meditation. Then it will come up to the blog site.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for the podcast, if you go to Spotify or Podbean or any, you could type in Fr John Flader, and then your podcast comes up on any podcast platform. Yes, I've tried it. I follow you. I follow your podcast.
That's new to me. That's very nice.
Because many people access through they find it helpful through the podcast, because you can listen to it more readily in the car or via your phone. But yeah, I wanted to touch on fasting. So fasting is 1 main meal and 2 smaller meals, which don't add up to the main meal.
And nothing between meals.
And nothing between meals. And for Maronites, it's fasting from midnight to midday.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what counts for Maronites. Now, obviously, you could fast from midnight to midday, and then what I do is I try to do up to midday. That's a good idea, and then eat the 1 meal and 2 smaller snacks.
Yeah.
With no snacks in between,
And
which is a good idea.
What I recommend is, let me go back to history.
Yeah.
When I was your age or younger, maybe your age had changed by then, but when I was, let's say, at university in my 20s, then the whole church fasted every day of Lent.
Yeah.
So it wasn't Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. It was every day of Lent. So when you went through the serving line at university, you were hungry in the evening, because you just had 2 smaller meals, you hadn't eaten between meals, and you were growing and getting in lots of exercise and sport. So you were hungry. Well, the whole church did that for all of those years until the fasting was reduced to Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. And abstinence used to be every Friday of the year, of course, abstinence from meat.
Have we become soft as a church?
Yes. I just said that categorically. I've got a quote from John Paul II.
But don't we want to be pastoral, Father? We always hear the word pastoral.
Yeah.
And be synodal or pastoral, all those key words.
Yes.
Shouldn't we soften up to get with the times, as the church has done?
We want to get to heaven, and we want to help lots of other people get to heaven. And let me quote Rodney Stark, an American sociologist of religion. One of his great books that I read was The Rise of Christianity. And he looks at why Christianity survived thrived in those early centuries in spite of persecutions. Well, at some other point, Rodney Stark said, the religions and institutions within religions which are the fastest growing are those that make the most demands on their subjects. And one of the things he mentions, I think it's in The Rise of Christianity, is the rate of growth of Christianity in those early centuries was about, he said, 10% a year. We can only estimate it.
Okay.
But 10% a year, equivalent to the fastest growing religious body today, which is the Mormons.
Is it the Mormons?
The Mormons. And the Mormons make great demands on their people. If you look at what they're doing, there's no smoking, there's no alcohol, and young people will spend 2 years
18 years old
spreading the faith.
As missionaries.
Exactly. That's demanding. And
I've tried to do evangelize a lot of those missionaries, they're interesting. It's very interesting what they do. They're from Utah in the United States. A lot of them are from Utah or from the Pacific Islands, and then they come to Australia. They spend 2 years, and they live in some shed house with the women and the men separate, and then they go around speaking to people, knocking on doors. I mean, it's interesting. It's 2 years off.
It's admirable. It is absolutely
admirable. It's very admirable. They're very committed.
Yeah. One experience I had in the Philippines, a group of people there asked me to go to promote my Journey into Truth DVDs at that time, now they're online, and book Journey into Truth, Instructions in the Catholic Faith, because they found it very useful. And in the Philippines, the people are very pious. There's a lot of religiosity there, but there's very little understanding of the faith. And then people get drawn away to the Protestants, the evangelicals, and the Mormons as well. So I went there, they paid my way, and I gave a number of talks in Manila. And then they flew me down to Cebu. And sitting in the Manila airport in the departure lounge, we were sitting there ready to get on the plane. And I noticed a group of young people who did not look Asian. They looked rather American, and they looked dressed like Mormons. And there were men and women. There could have been 15 or 20 of them. And they were going to get on the same plane. And I thought to myself, isn't this interesting? I am going to Cebu to tell the Cebuanos, look, it's so important to learn the truths of your faith so that you don't get drawn away by people of other religions. And here were the Mormons going to Cebu to tell the Cebuanos, come follow us. We're the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they're very attractive. One of the things about Mormonism...
Did you try and evangelize the Mormons on the plane before they got to Cebu?
I didn't. I wasn't sitting next to them. I would
to mitigate the...
No, I didn't. I didn't
the heresy,
have an opportunity.
the spread of heresy.
No, but I used to play tennis with a Mormon when I was chaplain of the University of Tasmania. He was a Rhodes Scholar, lecturer in law and in jurisprudence. He was a very
Is he from
fine
Utah?
Man. No, he was an Australian.
Oh, okay.
Really fine man. He gave me the Book of Mormon when his wife died, and I said I was praying for her.
I have a copy in my library of the Book of Mormon. Yeah.
No, but if you go along to their services on whatever day it is, Sunday, I suppose, you're met by very attractive people, clean living, well dressed.
They dress well.
Family people, large families, lots of joy. That's attractive. Now we have to do that in the Catholic Church too. We could do a lot better at this.
We could do a lot better because I think. I was just speaking with a friend of mine, and I mean, we're hinging on our 30s, late 20s. You're talking young people having families, looking at more conservative church circles, or parishes or groups. We're not the best as Catholics at welcoming people,
No,
or being
we're not.
the most welcoming.
No,
We can be very judgmental, especially in more traditional circles or conservative circles. We can be closed off.
That's not good either.
It's not a good thing. There needs to be in some places in the church, there's no sense of apostolate. There's no apostolic zeal.
Yeah,
it's such a shame.
The evangelization, the church exists to evangelize. Paul
It's seen
VI.
as optional.
Yeah.
That if you go to a more traditional liturgy and go for the lunch afterwards on Sunday and be in a traditional, with the priest and go to catechism, but there's no outward looking. There's no outward looking.
And the church
and it's a big
must
shame.
be.
It's a big shame.
The Pope has a really good line. I think he said this to youth in Mexico. He said, Christ stands at the door and knocks. And sometimes he is not knocking outside to be let in. He's knocking on the inside to be let out. We've got him in our life. He wants to get out to other people. And we just keep our light under a bushel measure. We're happy to be practicing our faith. And there's so many people that need our light, that want it. Good people. There's so many good people that are becoming converts. I mean, we had in the parish of Chatswood in Sydney, last year, throughout the whole year, or most of it, they ran my program, Journey into Truth, for adults.
It's fantastic. For those listening here, you can go to tvmaria.ph or anywhere where it's published. It's Journey into Truth.
Yeah.
By Fr John Flader.
Yeah.
It's a great introduction to Catholic faith, especially for somebody who's a catechumen or somebody wanting to learn their faith.
Catechist.
Yeah, or
parents.
catechists. Yeah, it's a great resource.
Yeah.
Which was actually aired on EWTN.
Yes, they use the section on the Creed. It's based on the Catechism of the Catholic Church. It's really a commentary, a simplification of the Catechism in 24 half-hour lessons on the DVDs.
I remember watching it, at Penny
But
Hills,
just in that program, they had between 40 and 50 people every night, sometimes more, for the 24 nights. And then they had a closing dinner, which I attended, and they all rejoiced for having finished the program. But the parish priest, Father David Ranson, was a really good priest in that large parish, told me that last year, that is to say, 2024, he received into the church in the Easter Vigil 49 people. Wow. 49 in one parish.
One parish.
And this year, he says, they have more than 50. So,
and I believe the Archdiocese of Sydney, I think it was in the Catholic Weekly, that there were over 300 catechumens this year.
Yes.
Diocesan-wide.
For 2025 or last year?
I don't recall whether it was last year.
Yeah.
I'll have to look it back up, but I saw that there were 300 catechumens.
Yeah, and what we're saying is
I don't know whether it's this year or last year.
Last year, the numbers of people received into the church, or of course baptized, were significantly higher than in previous years. It was a big jump. And we're seeing that now. It's a lot of young people. So the work of evangelization is reaching out, showing by your kindness, by your virtue, by your knowledge of the faith, the beauty of what we have. People are drawn to that.
You know what's great, Father, is that in the past few years, we've had big names become Catholic.
Oh, absolutely.
Former actor Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
You've had Jordan Peterson's wife.
Yeah.
You've had Candace Owens. You've had big names, whether you like them or not. Big names become Catholic, and Shia LaBeouf was an interesting one because he told his story to Bishop Robert Barron, and he explained that by playing Padre Pio, he immersed himself in the life of Padre Pio, and he spoke about the Mass, and he spoke about the traditional Latin Mass particularly. He said, and he really pushed for the Latin Mass because he said this Mass, the prayers and everything else, he felt the experience of the Mass and immersed himself in the Mass, and it was a beautiful thing, and it became Catholic.
Yeah, there's so many.
There's a lot of conversions happening. There's a lot of grace happening.
Yeah, there's many people. Right now, I think things are changing. I see a swing back to the faith, and what we're seeing still is the erosion of practicing Catholics dropping away. The numbers in this country were down to 8.2% in the last survey, which I think was COVID affected.
I think it was 10 before.
But no, we have to do all we can to spread our faith and let our light shine and be the saints that God wants us to be. And Lent is a time when we can quicken our pace. And one of the things that I like about Lent, and I put this in the meditation, is the word Lent. I'm a person, I love words. What's the origin of that? So if you look at the name for Lent in all the Romance languages based on Latin, it is based on the number 40. So quadragesima is what it's called in Latin. That means 40th. And then in Spanish it's quaresma. I think in French it's quarême. In Italian, I forgot it. Okay, that's all right.
Well, I think last Sunday in the traditional rite, we celebrated Quinquagesima, I think.
Well, that's another approach to it in the old calendar.
And the ordinariate calendar as well. That follows the traditional.
But we get Lent. Now, what does that mean? It's based on an old Anglo-Saxon word meaning springtime.
Yeah.
And because Lent falls in the spring in the Northern Hemisphere. But I say, if we live Lent well, if we really make that extra effort, then it's a springtime in our spiritual life. What is a springtime? It's new growth, it's buds, it's blossoms, it's leaves, it's flowers. We have that in our spiritual life if we live it well. And one of the things I think we should comment on is, and this is my way of recommending how to live Lent, prayer, fasting, almsgiving.
Okay.
A 3-course meal. When you go to the restaurant, it's a 3-course meal. And then in each of the courses, the menu allows for different things that you can choose from.
Yeah.
And I recommend choose something from each of the courses. So in your prayer life, how can you improve your prayer life? Maybe get to Mass more often. Meditate in your mental prayer. Do mental prayer and meditate on one of the counts of the Passion. I like to do that myself in Lent. I'm now reading a book about the Passion of our Lord just for Lent. And pray the Rosary, whatever. Many ways we can improve our prayer life, but choose something to improve your prayer life. Then fasting. Choose something in that area of self-denial. And one that I'm recommending now, because in my talking with so many people, I see virtually everybody has a problem with their mobile phone.
Yes.
And everybody. So there's 3 problems. Problem number 1, they look at it too often. I was talking with somebody last night, and he had an app on his phone. I think it was an iPhone, and it was something to do with the times you pick it up. And this man is involved in a very important IT company. He's in charge of Southeast Asia and India and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I think when he picked up his phone, the number like 161 appeared. So 161 times in one day, he picked up his phone. Now, maybe a lot of that was for business. However, how many times does the average person pick up his phone just to check? I want to check my emails, my phone messages, the news, the sports results, how the Pope is doing, and
Facebook,
so on.
Facebook, Instagram.
Exactly, and then you get that number 1
WhatsApp
is exactly. So number 1 is you look at it too often.
Telegram.
You don't need to look at it now. If you don't need to look at it now, have the mortification of Lent. Don't look at it. Wait until later. Number 2, they look at it for too long. So what happens? You get drawn into it. Oh, I just want to check this podcast on YouTube. Yeah. And then while you're watching that, a few more things had come up. Oh, that looks interesting. I'll look at that one. You look at your watch. You've been on the phone for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. You look at it for too long, too often, and too long. And then for some people, they look at the wrong sites. So there's where the pornography comes in and other sites that just lead you astray. And so they get caught in that. Social media is a trap. You can start on social media, any platform you want, and you start looking at this, and then there's another thing, then there's another one. And some of that isn't very wholesome either. So a mobile phone is a very good area for penance in Lent, apart from food, and the amount you eat, and the choice of what you eat, the seasonings you put on it, eating between meals.
So there's food. Obviously, we could give up certain foods, chocolates, maybe no meat on Fridays. Lots of Eastern Catholics like no meat, during Lent.
Eastern
Maronites.
Yeah, and the Orthodox.
Yeah. The Orthodox fast, the Byzantine fast, whether it's Byzantine Catholic or Byzantine Orthodox, is fantastic. Which was actually, there's a good episode by online which explains that we used to fast the same way. We used to give up dairy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
We used to, there were days with no dairy, no animal products, no cheese. Basically, it was a very strict fast. It was absolutely amazing.
The whole church was one for that first, 1,000 years. So we were all doing that. Now, then the Latin Rite, we've relaxed all of this. And actually, I was saying the Pope, John Paul II, speaking to priests in Rome off the cuff in Lent of one of the years when he was then still alive, maybe the 80s or 90s, said, he's just speaking from the heart, off the cuff. Sometimes I think we're falling behind in this area of penance. Consider our Orthodox brethren. Consider the Muslims with their Ramadan, not eating anything between sunrise and sundown.
Some of my Muslim friends, I love having conversations with some of my Muslim friends, and I have great respect for them because of their countercultural attitude that they have. They're countercultural.
Absolutely.
They're courageous. They wear their prayer gown, their abaya into work. They're countercultural, and I say that to my friends that I take a lot of inspiration from their counterculturalism. And today sometimes you have even we're too shy to pray grace before a meal.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have I've seen clergy who don't wear their collars in public because they're ashamed. Or we don't wear a cross in public, or sometimes we can be ashamed. We can learn counterculturalism from our Muslim brothers
and from other Christians. And I think, for example, in Australia, take rugby league, and Nathan Cleary, who's one of the best, walks onto the field, makes the sign of the cross. And what you see is those islanders who are Christians, maybe Methodists, whatever they are, getting down on their knees and praying in a big circle. And sometimes with players from the opposite side as well after the game. And they're praying. And they're praying in public. They're not afraid to do that. Well, let's not be afraid to manifest our faith. And we priests, let's not be afraid to dress like priests. And how often every priest has his stories where someone comes up to them and says, Father, could you hear my confession? I've certainly had that.
At an airport.
Or, at an airport, anywhere. Can you hear my confession? Or I was in a hospital visiting someone and said, Father, could you please come and see my mother? He's in this room over here. And you go and give her a blessing or hear a confession or whatever.
Let's talk about other mortifications, like maybe a cold shower.
Well, now let me say something about cold showers, because that's in my meditation.
It's good for you. Take
I'm,
an ice
I'm
bath.
a chaplain in a girls' school, Tangara.
Ice bath.
And I look after primary school. And I have the custom when I go into a classroom, and I've done several this past week leading up to Lent, and I ask the girls, and I phrase the question, what are some things that some people could do for Lent? And I say, and I'm not asking what you do. I don't want you to tell us in public what you do. That's up to you. But what are some things that some people do? And one of the girls said, well, people take a cold shower. A couple of years ago, I had a girl in year 4 saying, oh, we sleep on the floor in Lent. She and her sister, little girls, sleeping on the floor in Lent to be uncomfortable. And then in both the classes that I went to last week, in 1 or 2 days, they said, control the use of technology, which for them is the laptop, it's the iPad, it's the mobile phone, which they generally don't have at that age. But control it instead of spending all that time on technology. Well, that's what we're talking about with the mobile phone. And then, of course, they give up ice cream and lollies and soft drinks and chocolate. And so little children can be very generous. And I sometimes paraphrase our Lord's words in the Last Supper. No greater love does a child have than lay down McDonald's for Lent. I mean, that's the supreme sacrifice.
That's it.
No McDonald's for Lent. Oof, God, that's the sacrifice.
That was what we had after Mass, Sunday Mass growing up. McDonald's. That was the incentive.
Well, Sundays,
what you had.
Yeah, Sundays aren't days of penance, so you can go to McDonald's still after Lent. Now, we should live Lent well, then we have a springtime.
Okay.
It's too priceless an opportunity.
So prayer, fasting. I mean, I think we covered penance and fasting.
And then almsgiving, charity.
Let's talk about charity. What could we do during Lent for charity? Because I know myself and my wife, we're volunteering, to help the homeless, every week during Lent, for an hour. Helping out in our local community there, just to see Christ in the poor, in those less fortunate.
And they're human beings.
But what else could people do?
Well, what I always say is, first of all, you start with the word almsgiving. Giving alms is giving donations to charities, looking after the poor. However, charity begins at home. And that is not just a popular adage, it is a deep theological reality. Because when you study or teach the virtue of charity, then you learn that those who have the first claim on our charity or love are those closest to us, our family. So let's not go overseas and spend some time looking after the poor in some other country and ignore our family. Well, let's do that, but let's first look after our family. So just that being there for them. Often a man or a woman who's working outside isn't home enough. The children miss their parents. So be there. Husbands who work long hours, try to get home earlier. Have dinner with your children. Put them to bed. Read them bedtime stories, lives of saints. Say prayers with them. Teach them to pray. Get down on your knees. I know a lawyer who does that with his son, getting down on his knees and praying. Then offering to help. And I tell the children in Tangar that when you get home, there's different levels of charity at home. The first one is do your chores without having to be reminded. Why should your mother have to tell you, remember to take out the garbage or take the dog for a walk or stack the dishwasher or set the table or help with the meal? I mean, they do not have to be reminded. That just puts a strain on your mother or your dad. Then, sometimes go into the home after you've come home from school. Mom, is there anything I can do to help you? And maybe there isn't, but Mom would be so grateful if you said that. Is there anything I can do to help? Oh dear, could you please look after the baby? Could you please help me prepare the meal or whatever? Offer to help. Be generous. Christ is generous. He died for us on the cross, having loved his own who were in the world. He loved us to the end, St. John writes. Well, let's be generous in charity with others. And then apostolate comes into this. Think of those who you know in your school, in your workplace, in your neighborhood, who maybe are looking for God, or they're decent people, not necessarily Christians, and just engage them, have a coffee with them. Visit people that you know in the nursing home, in the hospital. Ring a friend at someone that's alone. Look after others. So then it starts in the family, it extends out beyond that, and what you're doing is admirable. So we look after each other first, and then we look after all those around us, and we spread the love of God in the world, and the world needs a lot of love.
Okay, so that's almsgiving. Let's talk about prayer.
Yeah, we did a little bit. Yeah.
What can we do as a routine of prayer or what?
Well, we mentioned a few things, but I think the first thing is a plan. You mentioned that. And if we let prayer come when we feel like it, we will do precious
leave it up
little.
To chance.
No, we've got to have a plan. And in my book, which book is this? Yes, it's the third book on life after death, titled From Time to Eternity.
Yes.
And it's a book about how to live your daily life, keeping your eye on the goal of heaven, because we get busy. And in that, the final chapter is called Sporting Spirit. And I look at 10 or 11 different things that athletes do to win a crown that fades, as St. Paul writes to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And one of them is they have a plan of training. Well, they get up at a certain time in the morning, they go to the swimming pool, they go to the gym, they go wherever, and there's a rigorous training program every day. Well, let's have a rigorous training program in our spiritual life. Let's have regular times for prayer. We get up, we say the morning offering, for example. Then let's say we want to do some meditation, 15 minutes, let's say with the Gospel on the Passion. But when are you going to do it? Have a time for that. We say the Angelus at noon or some other time. And the rosary.
So create a little bit of a routine. Maybe
have a routine, absolutely.
Morning, midday, afternoon, evening prayer.
Yeah. Yep. Have regular times.
And that would, and all this could possibly continue past Lent. We may be more ascetical during Lent, but there needs to be some elements that we keep.
Absolutely.
That makes a permanent change, rather than being. We don't want to be overzealous during Lent and then we drop it afterwards. We have a nice big Lebanese barbecue. We forget about it. And we get, have too many drinks and move on.
Go back to our pagan ways.
That's it.
Absolutely not. And I think a lot of good people find that that's exactly what they do. And they keep something of what they were doing in Lent and last for the rest of their life. And each year they add a little bit more, either in quantity or quality, to what they were doing. And they're going up that inclined plane to heaven. Want. Yeah.
That's what we want, that consistency. If it means you add one or two things that you know are going to make an impact for you in Lent, and you keep doing them afterwards, because we want to grow in the long. We want long-term growth, good, stable, long-term growth. We want a certain percentage of growth each year in our spiritual life.
Yeah.
So we need to have it consistent. We can't have a spike and then a crash.
Yeah.
You don't want to spike during Lent and then we crash and go back down and then we're lower and then we spike every year. We want a nice, good curve, stable.
Yeah. So the way I look at it. Yeah, the way I look at it though is it's an inclined plane overall. But on Ash Wednesday, there is a spike. On Ash Wednesday, you start doing things that you weren't doing before.
Yeah,
so you go straight up. Hopefully, you keep that level till the end of Lent. But when you come down at the end of Lent, you keep something of what you were living. So your base level after Lent is a bit higher than it was on Ash Wednesday.
Okay, good.
And that's your base level for the next year, going up. And then there's another spike, and then you go back down a little bit higher than you were before. So gradually, you're getting better over time.
Perfect. That's a good, really good way. That's going to stick with me, I think.
Good.
Thank you so much, Father, for being here tonight on the show. And I hope you have a blessed Lent. And to all our listeners who are entering Lent tomorrow, Ash Wednesday, whether you're listening here in Australia or all around the world, have a blessed Lent. And may we be spiritually regenerated during this time. And thank you very much, Father, for being with me here tonight on the show.
Pleasure, George. Good to be with you again.
Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe to our weekly podcast alert. Go to thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That is thecatholictoolboxshow.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to the show. So thank you for tuning into the show. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here on the Catholic Toolbox. Don't forget to tune in next week. And God bless you. God bless. Take care and take action. In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.